just a moment. Thank you, Olivia or Catherine, whoever got to that. But we want to start with a bit of a presentation regarding what the charter is, what it isn't, and also kind of what's being discussed right now before we get into the larger public comment, which will be the bulk of this. So I'm Kevin Ranker, and I was elected chair of the Charter Review Commission, and I'm from Orcas Island. And like I said, we'll get to the other commissioners in just a moment. But if Olivia or Catherine, whoever's going to do it, thank you so much. So we're just going to go through a few slides here to talk about the charter, the San Juan County Charter, and what it is and what's being discussed. So if we could go to the first slide. So the charter form of government comes out, this is actually within our charter currently, this first piece. And what it's talking about here, you don't have to read it, but it's talking about how the charter should be the general authority for the county of San Juan. And if you can go to the next slide. The charter form of government comes from our state constitution. And in the constitution, there's two forms of county government. One is the form of county government we were, which is commonly known as a constitutional form of government until we passed a home rule charter about 15 years ago now. And that form of government has set elected offices and 3 elected commissioners, which make up the legislative branch, and so on. The Constitution allows for counties to adopt what's called a home rule charter, which is what we've done. And the home rule charter allows you to basically make up your government with a couple caveats. You can't influence the prosecuting attorney or the judges of the Superior Court. Those are set in the Constitution and in statute because they are technically officers of the county and the state. But the other elected officials and the entire structure of government is available to us to define. And in a presentation that we had before our Charter Review Commission recently, Ron Sims, who is the past executive of King County and was also the Assistant Secretary or Deputy Secretary for HUD under the Obama administration, he just finished chairing the Charter Review Commission for King County, who's looked at some similar issues to what we may be looking at. And he described the charter in a way that I want to share because I found it very impactful. He said that the charter should be considered our constitution. It's our county's constitution. It's the baseline form of government. It's the structure of government that will allow us or disallow us to do different things. So while the charter will not create policy and does not create policy, it creates the framework for the county that will allow good policies to take place. And that's, for me anyway, a great way of thinking about what the charter is. So it's really, really important that we get it right. This only happens once every 10 years. We get to do a review of our county's constitution and figure out what form of government do we want? What different ideas should we put forward? So next slide, please. So here's your 18 Charter Review Commissioners elected from San Juan Island, from Orcas Island, and from Lopez Island, and representatory of the population of those islands. And I should say districts. It's not just those islands. The Orcas district includes Waldron, the Shaw is within the Lopez district, and so on. And so it's the outer islands as well. And here's the 18 individuals who, again, we'll introduce ourselves in just a moment. Next slide, please. So early on in our process, each of the different Charter Review Commissioners had been, since being elected in November and even beforehand, I'm sure, thinking about different ideas, but also talking to their neighbors, hearing from different people on the street, and so on. And early on, we put together an initial list of all the different ideas that were being discussed and broke up the Charter Review Commission into these different subcommittees. And the names next to them are the chairs of those individual subcommittees. And so as I'll get into in the next slide on some of the topics that are being discussed, these subcommittees are where the on-the-ground conversation is taking place regarding the minutiae of different subject matters, from the internal workings of the charter review process to how can we be more proactive on climate change and the environment, to looking at our different positions, who's elected, who's not, and so on. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is not an exhaustive list. This is a summarization of some of the issues that are starting to get traction in those subcommittees. And so we would love to hear your thoughts this afternoon on these individual topics, but we'd also love to hear any new ideas. So by no means is public comment this afternoon limited to these issues. It's open to whatever you believe that the charter commissioners and ultimately the charter should be looking at. So top issues that are being discussed, tourism and vacation rentals. The tourism piece, it's one of the things that's being discussed is with regard to the tourism tax dollars and revenue that come in, should those be spent internally through county government as opposed to what's being discussed or what's been typical now, which is that we outsource that to a wonderful organization that does promotion of the islands. There's also a very interesting conversation going on with regard to a rights of nature conversation. Should we have in the charter itself some sort of language that gives nature rights under our county code, gives the natural environment rights? Under the Climate and Environment Committee, there's some very interesting conversations going on regarding should we have an independently elected climate commissioner? And should we consider creating an office of climate and resiliency within the county? And the discussion around that has been that if they're independently elected, they have the ability to stand up for their agenda. But there's also discussion of just creating the office and so on. Elected versus appointed. There's a number of elected positions from the county assessor, auditor, treasurer, court clerk, sheriff, and so on that are being discussed. Should they remain elected or should they be appointed? And if so, what differences would that make to the citizens of San Juan County and the betterment of our county going forward? There's also some specific conversations going on with regard to elections, observations, and so on. Next slide, please. Okay, so the rest of the subcommittees here. Under governance, we're looking at the role of the county manager and the county council. There's a discussion of whether or not the islands could self-govern. Could you incorporate an individual island? And we have some legal opinion questioning whether or not that's actually possible, but the discussion continues and we'll see if it's possible and if there's the will for it. I'll get into in a moment what happens after we come up with recommendations. There's a discussion of broadening the and maybe making it easier to file citizens initiatives in San Juan County. And should you be able to electronically file, similar to well, what we saw over the last year, where if somebody wanted to do an initiative, it would have been impossible to go door to door and collect signatures. And so how would you deal with it in a time of crisis like we've had in 2020? But also, would that just allow it to be easier to gather signatures? And there has to be a balance there. How do you make it easier to file an initiative without making it so easy that we have initiatives that are frivolous being filed? Justice and equity. We have a separate subcommittee looking at the issues of racial justice, equity, and equality that is having some fascinating conversations with regard to should there be an independent citizens oversight committee over law and justice, so over the courts, the prosecutor, and the sheriff. And what would that look like and what would their authority be? How can we make the county far more representatory of the diverse population that we have and make sure that there is no discrimination and we're being as inclusive and equitable as possible? And then there's an operations committee, which is looking at the kind of operations, day-and-date operations of the county. And some of the issues that are being looked at there are everything from salaries to public records and so on. So next slide, please. So before we get into public comment, we're going to do a couple of other things. But one is I want to talk about the process that happens. So we as a Charter Review Commission are mandated to come up with recommendations, and we're hoping to have those completed by, say, mid-June. And then those recommendations go to the county council. The county council does not, however, have the ability to reject our recommendations. They review them and they can add some of their own if they like, but the recommendations have to go to the public for a vote, and that vote will be on the November election this year. So on the ballot this year will be recommendations from the Charter Review Commission based on all the input we're receiving to make these sorts of changes to our county constitution. So going forward, we would like to try to limit speakers to somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, and that should be plenty of time. We'd like for speakers, everybody to have a chance, and then we will probably have time for people to go a second time if they like and take a little more time. When you do speak, please raise your hand, either using the application of Zoom or just physically raise your hand, and we'll be toggling between the different screens to make sure we see you. And then state your name and where you're from in the county as well. And so before, if you could stop sharing, Olivia, thank you. Before we go into the public comment, which will be the remainder of this meeting, we want to spend a little bit of time just introducing your Charter Review Commissioners. And when they introduce themselves, they will also say what committees they serve on, so that if you're interested in a certain topic, you know who to go to, and also if they chair that committee. So why don't we start? I'm going to go by what I'm seeing on my screen. So we're going to go with Olivia first, and then Maureen will be next.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for attending this afternoon. My name is Olivia Roseberry. I'm from Orcas Island, and I'm on the Operations and the Governance Committee. I also serve as Vice Chair with Kevin.
Excellent. Maureen, and then Patty.
Hi, I'm Maureen C. I live in San Juan Island. I was on the last Charter Review Commission, so this is another journey I'm on. I am the lead for the elected versus appointed committee, which is very lively and very active. And I'm also on the operations committee. And thank you all for coming.
I'm Patty Garcia. I'm from San Juan Island, and I'm on the operations committee and the process committee, and I'm the lead for the initiative and referendum committee.
Thank you, Patty. We'll go to Richard and then Paul Dawson.
Hi, I'm Dick Grout from San Juan Island. I'm on 3 committees. I'm on governance, climate, and elected versus appointed.
Thanks, Dick. Paul, and then Anne-Marie.
Hi, I'm Paul Dossett. I'm on the operations committee. In fact, I'm chair of that committee. And of course, we're working on personnel issues, the personnel manual. We're going to get into see if I can pronounce this right. Ombudsman. Sorry about that. And also, we're also looking into the salaries of our elected officials and appointed officials. And I'm also on the elections and appointed committee as well.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Shanks, and I chair the Environment and Climate Committee. And I also serve on the Initiatives and Referendum Committee with Patty Garcia.
David Dellendorf, and then Janet Burnell.
I'm David Dellendorf. I've lived on San Juan Island for 20 years. I'm on 3 committees: the Elections Committee, the Elected versus Appointed Officials Committee, and the Governance Committee. I am not the chair of any of those committees.
I'm Janet Brownell. I'm from Orcas Island. I am on the Governance Committee. And having served on many different committees and boards over the 25 years I've lived in the islands, you should be really proud of the people that are serving on this commission. It's an exceptional, exceptional group of people. So feel good about the representatives, except for me. I mean, I don't know why you elected me, but everyone else is fantastic.
We'll go to Kyle Davies and then Jane Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to see 2 pages of faces here. I live on San Juan Island and officially co-lead with Jane Fuller on Justice and Equity, and also sit on the Process Committee and have a warm heart for the climate and environment conversation.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane Fuller. I'm living on Lopez Island in District 3, and I'm currently co-chairing Justice and Equity with Kyle Davies, sitting on the Governance Committee as well, and sitting on the Elections Committee also, and can echo what Janet said about the wonderful commissioners that are in this group. And thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Excellent. Thanks, Jane. We'll go to Dave Anderson and then Bob O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dave Anderson. I'm from San Juan Island, and I am the lead on the Governance Committee, which meets on Thursdays between 7 and 8, and we'd love to have some public comment then. I'm also on the Initiatives and Referendum Committee, which meets Mondays between 7 and 8, and this is just a wonderful experience, and I'm thankful for everybody who came here today and look forward to hearing. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Bob and then Tom Starr.
Oh, thank you. After practicing law in Nashville, Tennessee for 40 years, I retired. My wife and I moved to Lopez Island 7 years ago. I am on the Climate and Environment Committee. I'm on Elections and Appointed, and I am the chair of the Process Committee, which meets from 10:30 till noon every Tuesday, and you're welcome to come and comment. Right now, we're tackling 3 big issues. The biggest one being the Bill of Rights for nature, whether there's going to be for human beings and for nature, whether there's going to be one, and if so, what form it will take. We're also working on the more aspirational preamble, and we're the third thing we're looking at is what do all of you, what do the citizens think is working, and what do the citizens think is broken and ought to be fixed in the charter? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Starr from San Juan Island, 50-year resident, 35 years land surveying in all the islands. And I'm on the Climate and Environment Committee and the Elections Committee. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tom. We'll go to Bill Apple and then Liz and then Tony. You're muted, Bill.
I'm Bill Apple. I'm on San Juan, a recent immigrant from Waldron, where I was for 40 years. I'm a lawyer, and I'm on the board. I'm on the Process Committee.
Thanks, Bill. Liz?
Hey, everybody. I'm Liz Lafferty from Lopez, representing District 3. I am on the Process, Initiative, and Climate Committees, and excited to have you all here and see where this conversation leads us today.
Thanks, Liz. Tell the puppy hello.
Yeah, puppy.
Yeah. Tony?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tony Gazelle. I'm from Orcas Island. And like many on this charter review, we're passionate about what's going on. And I truly love this county. We moved here about 25 years ago with our family, and I'm really happy to be involved. I lead the Elections Committee, and I'm on the Governance and Elections versus subcommittees. So really happy to be around, and looking forward to listening and hearing what you have to say, so we can make this charter a little better. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. I think lastly, and definitely not least, is Sharon.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sharon Abreu, 20-year resident of Orcas Island. I am serving on the Elections Committee, the Governance Committee, the Climate and Environment Committee, and the Justice and Equity Committee. It's a privilege, and I'm very glad to be here with you all today.
Wonderful, thanks. Did I miss anybody? Okay, wonderful. So in the chat already are everybody's emails. And so if you would like to email any of us, our county emails are in the chat, so you can just cut and paste those and send us any other comments you may have. But we're going to go ahead and get into the public comment period of this, which will take us through the remainder of the meeting. And so again, we'd like you to try and limit your comments to somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. I'm not really going to cut you off, but we'd like you to try and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to talk. And last night we had about 20, 25 more people, and we still had opportunity for some people who really wanted to even go a second time. So we'll probably have that opportunity again today. And again, raise your hand if you can using Zoom. We've got people who are watching that. You can also, if I miss you, send it in chat or just physically raise your hand. We can be a little loose here. And again, state your name for the record. And then if you could just tell us where you're from as well. So with that, we'll open it up for public comment. And so who would like to start us off? Okay, there's so many of you jumping at once. All right.
Looks like Liz has her hand up.
Liz, you have something to say? Are you going to be a citizen on this one?
No, I apologize, Kevin. I did come in a couple minutes late, so you may have already said this, but I did want to make sure the public knew what our plans with their comments.
Oh, no, thank you very much. I was going to do that later, but I think now would be appropriate. So with your comments today, what we're going to do is we're compiling everything. And so if you comment on something we're already working on, we'll take that into consideration, whether you were supportive or had questions or concerns. And then any new ideas will also be taken in, and we will assign those to the appropriate subcommittee to begin tackling and diving into. And I should also say that our prosecuting attorney and his whole team are being really supportive of us as well. And we have some others advising us. And so whether there's legal questions or policy questions or what have you, we're able to really dive into those. So nothing isn't on the table. I want to say again, though, what the charter is and what it isn't. We, the charter and the Charter Review Commission, will not create policy. We create the framework for government. So should there be a new department, should somebody be elected versus appointed, should we have new rules and mandates within the structure of government to make sure that we're truly equitable and just. And how do we do that? Those are the sorts of things we can dive into, but we wouldn't be able to, for instance, on the issue of electing a climate commissioner, we could create the position of an independently elected official. We would not be able to dictate, however, what they do or what policies they may create or what policies they may advance to the county council. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll go to Lisa and then to Lerner. Lisa Byers, sorry.
Okay, hi, I'm Lisa Byers. I live on Orcas, and I'm in the 25 to 30 year club, somewhere in there, in terms of how long I've been here. And my comments are not well organized, so they range from sort of high level to very practical low level. And on the high level, I've noticed I really encourage structural change that helps us give authority at a more local level for making decisions, and that also align with, I think, commonly held values in the islands that are about protecting the environment, and also sort of retaining this as a place where quirky and individuals and characters can thrive. And so those are kind of awkward in the sense that I'm not being specific, but what I've heard you talking about so far that I really like is the idea of a Bill of Rights. And I think I'm looking for different things that signal to people when they move here that this is that they're drawn here because this place is different. And so let's put structure in place that helps them engage differently. I can't tell you the number. I mean, I love meeting. One of the reasons I love living here is because we have new people who come here all the time and sort of reinvigorate the place. And yet the number of times I've heard people who've lived here 4 or 5 or 10 years say, oh, if only I'd known, I wouldn't have done this thing the way I used to do on the mainland. I would have done it differently. And I feel like the idea of the rights of nature, the idea of a climate position, things like that signal that we really take seriously that we're at a fragile point in our inhabitation of these islands. is very important. And then on a more sort of pragmatic level, I served on EPRC for a little over 10 years, quite some time ago now. I think it was over 15 years ago now, but I have witnessed EPRC over the years have a constant churn of people who step up, wanting to serve, wanting to be of service, and then they leave in frustration. And that to me is a structural element, that there's not enough sustained support from the county. I think there's divisions of the county that are historically and chronically understaffed, and that has to do with our tax structure, and that creates a lot of frustration in the citizenry. There's poor enforcement, there's poor follow through, and I know that there's a theory of folks that the way we keep the islands is by having a nice, consistent level of dysfunction. But I'm not sure that that's the place for it to occur. So that's all I'll say for now. Thanks. Thanks so much for what you guys are doing. I'm jazzed that we have this charter government and that you all stepped up. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, very much for your comments. So I've got Lerner and then Andy and then John Helding.
Hi, so my comment's actually about something else, but first I just wanted to say I also really strongly support the rights of nature and environmental Bill of Rights. Thanks for everybody that's been working on that. What I want to comment on is something that I haven't heard yet, and that's ranked choice voting. And I apologize if I'm late to the party on this. I've been really busy the last 6 months, but I have been working on this and really interested in this issue for a few years. So I believe that the charter provides us with an opportunity during this update to get it done more easily than it would be otherwise in other years. So kind of a golden opportunity in my mind. So I think ranked choice voting is an improvement over the way voting is currently done, in the sense that it's more democratic. It allows us to pick our favorite candidate first without worrying about throwing away our vote or helping elect someone that you don't want. It's also more equitable in that candidates feel more encouraged to run because they don't feel afraid of being the spoiler in an election. There are some costs associated with the software needed for implementing ranked choice voting. But in a county like ours, because we're a small county, it's a lot more manageable. And there's other considerations. There's a wonderful organization, Fair Vote Washington, that is standing by, ready to work with us, prepared to help us work through the structure so that we can get it right. And there are already, examples of it that we can draw from. And so in some ways, a lot of some other places have already made some of the mistakes that we can now avoid. Why I'm really excited about it is not only to improve our own elections, and really, I think it has to do with what Lisa was saying, improving making some structural change that will actually, make our community stronger, make us more able to create the changes that we want in the future. But also because San Juan County is a perfect testing ground, and it could not only improve our elections, but help pave the way for other parts of Washington State to adopt it. And eventually, I'd like to see it be a statewide thing and even for national elections. So that's my comment. And I would be happy to work with anybody on this. And if there's already people trying to work on it, I'd love to participate, and let's see if we can make it happen.
Thank you, Lerner, very much for your comments. I want to let you know that last night at our town hall, one of the hottest topics that came up was ranked choice voting. So we're hearing the message. And you're correct. This would be an opportunity to look at that, which would be easier than others. So we have Andy Finley and then John Helding.
Oh, Lerner just preempted me. I was going to discuss fair ranked choice voting. I also think it's a much more democratic way to go about elections and has so many advantages over the way that we vote now. So I second that. And what Lisa was talking about in terms of a structural change and a way that we could actually have people who move here and live here express the fact that we do operate differently. And I think one area in that we could really show that and shine in would be tourism. And that if there's a way for us to change the way that we relate to tourism so that it enhances our way of life here, as opposed to, unbalancing the fragile balance that we already have with water and so many of our resources, to make it a more ecologically directed, I think it would just improve. I think people would really want to come here for that reason, and it would enhance what we're trying to do here. I think we could be a model for other places as well. So thank you. Thank you for including all of us in the public here in your deliberations before. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your comments. So we're going to go to John Helding, and then I think it's Bill Drew.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you all of the folks serving on this commission and for your outreach for public comment. My name is John Helding. I live on Lopez Island. As context for my comments, I just finished 11 years serving on the Lopez Island School Board and 10 years chairing the school board. And when I was anticipating joining in just to see what's happening and hear what's being considered and such, what I'm going to talk about was not in my mind until I started to think about this meeting, and then now seeing what you've put up here as the areas you're focusing on. But the question I have is around the rights of children and the rights of intergenerational community existing in the islands. And as many of you probably know, all three of our three large school districts are in financial distress because of the new state financing system and the onerous levy lid that's been placed on us, with cutbacks in programs, cutbacks in staff, and ongoing potentially. And if we think about the critical importance of our school districts, both to being supporting multi-generational community, as well as they're our largest employers on the island. So all of that, as I'm thinking on that and seeing what areas that you're considering and working on, I realized, where are the schools, where are the kids, where is the support for intergenerational community? And I have no idea if that could be a part of what you work on or a statement that could be made. One structural idea that comes to mind would be creating in the county an educational coordination or educational office that could help the school districts work between themselves, so that we could better cooperate and come together to serve the needs of education in the county. It's just one structural idea that came to mind. But while I 150% support the rights of nature as being something considered and included in an appropriate way, that rights of children and what we can do in this, what you can do in your process to hold that up, and in particular, any help that might be offered to the crisis that our school districts are facing, just seems to be something to hold up to the light and give due consideration to.
Yeah. Oh. Thank you very much, John, for those comments. Okay, Bill, Drew, and then Iris.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Kevin. It's actually Bill Lidrew. For some reason, the letter got dropped off.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, yes.
No problem. Thank you so much. And I'll echo what others have said with respect to the wonderful commitment that this commission is making. And I'm so impressed with what I'm hearing from members of the commission and the issues you're addressing. I think this is really important for the future. I've only been a resident full-time of Lopez Island now for just about 4 years. Been coming here for many years, and I'm Canadian. So moving to America is an eye-opening experience for me in terms of politics, and that actually extends to the county level. You know, no longer am I looking at it from afar, I'm actually living it. I wanted to make a couple of comments, and I apologize, I haven't, seen much of the material, but just picking up on your headings. And one thing that strikes me is the whole issue of the oversight body for justice and courts, et cetera. And I'd focus more, I think, on the Sheriff's Department. I know there's a civil service board that has a role in selecting police officers and putting the mechanisms in place to ensure that that's carried out in promotions, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm struck by the fact that certain positions in the county administration are elected and others are appointed. And I'm sort of wandering into the elections area here as well. And I don't quite understand the logic of it. I don't know why the auditor would be, and the sheriff would be elected, and the prosecutor, but not the town manager or the chief of the fire and emergency services. I mean, my view is your sheriff is a servant of the people, for sure. I think it's extremely important that your sheriff is a professional, and I think less important that he be a good politician. And please, this has no reference whatsoever to our current sheriff. Has nothing to do with him. It's a question of the governance structure. And it seems to me there is a need to very closely look at whether or not the county auditor should be an elected position. I don't know what value that adds as opposed to a person that's recruited through, by the council or through some mechanism within the council as a senior public servant. And there's a question of accountability. I'm not clear as to whom the sheriff is accountable. Certainly he's accountable to the voters during election, but in terms of to whom is he accountable in terms of complaints or in terms of performance? There doesn't seem to be any ombudsperson that complaints can be brought to. So I do see that as a bit of an outlier. The other comment I would make on elections is my perception here is that the mail-in voting works extremely well. It was refreshing to see it. The pressure is off to get to the polling booth on election day and line up. So whatever else we do, I think we should keep, and if necessary, strengthen the mail-in voting, the drop-off voting. I think it works very, very well. I probably have other comments, but that's all I'll touch on for now, and I will keep a close eye on this process. I'm fascinated by your work, and I look forward to what's going to come from it in the coming months. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Bill, thank you for your comments. We'll go to Iris and then Ocean.
Hi, I'm Iris Gravel, 25-year resident of Lopez Island. I'm very excited by this overview. It has helped me to understand even more the value of the Home Rule Charter and this opportunity for us to participate in some changes to our local government. And many of the ideas that Kevin outlined sound really worthy of considering. The one that I'm most interested in is the rights of nature. We're really in danger of believing that humans are separate from nature, and the rights of nature model helps to correct that. Those systems that treat corporations as people and property as, or in nature as property to be bought and sold. And we are way past overdue for rethinking those attitudes. I'm involved with the Community Rights San Juan Islands group, and we've been talking about what rights of nature might look like for San Juan County, and the importance of, first of all, defining the rights of the Salish Sea, and recognizing that the Salish Sea is a living being that has legal rights. Also to recognize the fundamental rights of tribal nations, peoples, and to reverse this is a part of many rights of nature efforts that I think is most powerful, is reversing the onus of proof. And I have to refer to my notes about what that really means, but it's when a person or a community takes action to enforce the rights of the Salish Sea. The laws would require the development proponents to prove that their project or activity or development doesn't interfere with the rights of the Salish Sea. I don't think our current systems do that nearly well enough. As Kevin said, the Home Rule Charter is basically the county's constitution. And I, along with many other people in the county, believe that a local constitution should include a Bill of Rights that includes nature. So I look forward to hearing more about your work and these opportunities to have some input. And thanks again for taking time to bring us together.
Thank you very much, Iris. And I want to state again that each of these different subcommittees, and maybe I didn't clarify this in the beginning, they are also open to the public, as are our weekly full commission meetings. And so if you want to follow the discussion of rights of nature, or what I'm sure Lerner and others have brought up, the ranked choice voting issue will be assigned to a different committee. If you want to follow that discussion, you're welcome to sit in on those committees, and there will be opportunity for public comment. And also all of the subcommittee meetings are being recorded, and they are available on the county website. So if you can't sit in on one live, you can go back and see what was said, and then write to us or email us at the emails provided in chat. So we're going to go to Ocean for our next comment, and then Judy Scott.
Hi, my name is Ocean. I'm here with my wife, River, and I wanted to, we've been here living on Orcas Island now going on 4.5, 5 years. And I'm very inspired and support what we've been talking about, the last speaker, with the rights of nature and the sea and the creatures that live here and the indigenous people, and also fully support and inspired by the idea of ranked choice voting. And I'm going to turn it over to River.
Hi, I'm River Sky, and I am a holistic researcher, creating a holistic research farm homestead here on Orcas Island. And there's a couple of things that I want to say. One of them is, with regards, you said language of the preamble. I would love to see some sort of language that talks about the equality of all life, not just the life of men, but the life of plants, the life of women, the life of children, something about giving voice to the voiceless. Because I think that's really what's coming in here is, what is it that's making all these rules and laws? Nature can't really speak up for herself. So we actually need to speak up for nature. And then the other thing that really inspires me, there's a couple of things. One, with law enforcement, I feel like, I would love to see them engaging in community building, because they deal with the public so much. They probably are really aware where the problems are, right? And they have repeated problems in repeated neighborhoods with repeated segments of the population. And so instead of leaving them at probably the most stressful intersection, catching people when they do it wrong and making them change, being able to do proactive, okay, what's missing here in this community? What's missing that would have this not arise? And I would love to see law enforcement eventually transition into community building, where you have these acts against the public or acts against other people being the rare occasion, as opposed to right now, they're dealing with it constantly, which, I'm friends with the former, I can't remember what he was on Orcas Island, but he was a police officer for 30 years and the guy can't even sleep at night anymore. So it's a really hard job for them to put them on the line like that. And so I think that'd be much more nourishing to them and to the community. The other thing I'd love to see is, I'd love to see some way of measuring the wellness. So often we just get left with measuring economics, and that leaves so much out. Most of the things that really matter, you can't put a dollar sign to. And so finding a way, a metrics to measure the wellness of communities, the wellness of nature, the wellness, I'm sure once we talk about it, we can come up with all sorts of ways to measure this and look at this. But they say you produce what you measure. So if we start measuring wellness, that'll definitely add a more holistic approach to the current way that we make choices. And goodness, I think that's it. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, we're gonna go to Judy Scott.
Hi, I'm Judy Scott, and I want to thank all the commissioners on this Charter Review Commission for doing such an incredible job getting this organized. It's a big task, and you've really put forward some great committees and ideas to get us all going. So thank you very much. And I want to put a plug in for the Climate Commissioner. I think that's a great idea. But interesting, what River was just saying about metrics, that was one I wanted to put on the table. If there was, as we go about our work, and I don't know how you would put this into the Charter Commission, but I throw out the notion that there could be some kind of evaluation tool, maybe you do call it a metric, for making sure there's equal access to healthcare, housing, and mental health on the island. And that as maybe it belongs in the Justice and Equity Committee, but I think it really goes through all that we do. How do we make sure that in a diverse community that we have on the islands, that people without the money and resources are really taken into account when we design the healthcare delivery system, the mental health, and our housing availability. And that those are real priority items for us as we try and honor the diversity of this community and make sure everyone has equal opportunity. The other thing is whether there's a way in the budget process to design the budget process that goes through the county every year in a way that incorporates some mechanism for evaluating whether this notion of equal access and equal opportunity is embedded in the way we make our budgetary decisions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. Okay, we're going to go to Patricia.
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. Well, my name is Patricia Miller. I'm over on Orcas Island. And I wanted to say thank you all for your service. I have not followed what you've been doing much before this, but I did have an opportunity to look at your website and the list of issues. And I thank you for making that all very transparent and easy to follow. I didn't see any sort of timeline on that. And I don't know if you've talked about a timeline yet, but I think that would be something that would be helpful for me to see. And then as a hospital district commissioner, I encourage you, if you have issues related to healthcare, that you consider engaging with the superintendents of the hospital districts across the islands to share any feedback you get and any ideas, because we're very interested in partnering with all aspects of the county.
Thank you so much for your comments. It's great to be in a meeting with you again. It's been a long time.
It has.
Yeah.
Good to see you all.
Thank you. Regarding the timeline, so we are hoping to have our what will be charter amendments to the county commissioners by mid-June. And again, just to go through that process, the county commissioners do not have the ability to, as you'll actually remember, you were there in the beginning, they don't have the ability to disregard or change the ones we put forward, but they do have the ability to add on. But regardless, the recommendations that we put forward, the amendments that we put forward will then be on the November ballot. There is an opportunity, if we have a number of different amendments that we want to put forward, to split them. And this is actually what King County is doing right now. King County had, I think, 12 or 14 different amendments, and they chose to put half of them on the ballot this last November, and half of them will be on the ballot this next November. And the way that would work for us then as commissioners is, instead of our work being done in June, and then we go out to the public and explain to people why we've put forward the recommendations we have, we would continue coming up with new recommendations until the end of this year. And so approximately half our recommendations would be on the ballot this November, and more could be on the ballot in 2022 if we continued meeting. But right now, our intention is to meet through June to come up with the recommendations and then put those forward.
And do I recall correctly that each item on the ballot has to be a separate, you can't group them together, each one has to be a separate initiative or a separate item that is voted on? Yeah. Is that correct?
Thank you, Patty, for clarifying that. Yes. So within reason, if they are different subject matter, they have to be a different amendment to the charter, and they would be voted on separately. And if you'll remember, in the very first charter that came forward, there was actually two questions. One was, should we go to a charter form of government? And the second was, should we go from 3 to 6 council members? And those were very separate, distinct questions. And so, for instance, the issue of should we have an independently elected climate commissioner would be a separate question. There are a number of different, not small, some of them very, very important, but items within the charter itself, and some of those may be able to be grouped together. But for the most part, the larger questions that will go out will each be a separate ask on your ballot. There will be a separate question on the ballot.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, others? Is that it? Well, I have to sit here for 2 hours, so come on.
Kevin, you have several other, Robin Reed.
Oh, sorry, I'm just not seeing them then. Okay, so let's go to Robin, and then we'll go to Bob Gamble. Now I'm starting to see some.
Yeah, there's like 2 others beyond that.
Thank you, Kevin. And also, I want to echo what other folks have said. First, I'm Robin Reed, and I'm on Lopez Island, and have been a part-time, sometimes full-time resident here for 20 some years. And I just want to thank the commission. What a talented commission you have there. Wow, what a breadth. Very impressive. And I'm glad we have so many commissioners because what you have to cover is really broad. And so having that, that diversity of viewpoints is really important. I wanted to sort of make 3 points that have the underlying principle of encouraging you, and it looks like you are doing this, to be as forward-looking as possible, because the next 10 years is going to be massive change, not only in our climate, but our economy, et cetera. And so being as forward-looking as we possibly can be with that crystal ball, and as innovative as possible in addressing those issues. And so I've kind of 3 points, and I'll go through them quickly. First on the charter process, as I was saying, this next 10 years is going to be, unprecedented change in our climate, but also other issues. And so I really support the idea of, you talk about a climate commissioner. I think that's a great idea, but I want to make sure that, that we don't become a single issue focus. Like Joe Gatos from CDOC Society just published a great paper about what's affecting the Salish Sea. And there's 6 or 7 things, and they're all important, and it's not all about climate. And so let's make sure that we are going after, I don't know if you want to use the word sustainability, I like resilience, but that we're having broader issues under that commission. And the reason why this is, why we need to do this is that my profession, I'm a professor in sustainability science. And these issues are immensely complex, and they cut across every single thing we do in every department at our county and every way that we live. And so, so being able to, you know, sort of have a person that is, you know, is kind of pulling that together is really important. But also I think it's really important for them to have some kind of citizen committee. I don't actually know how the county does things, so I want to be careful about saying a particular thing, but you know, some kind of committee, because I mean, just look at the people on this call. Unbelievable knowledge, you know, deep knowledge in many areas. And so having that backup for that commissioner, so that they can look at these huge trade-offs between build the road and, you know, the rights of the CLC. There'll be all kinds of trade-offs that are be really important to address and to really debate very carefully. I also, you know, have been a little bit part of the comp plan conversation, and I understand that they're thinking of putting climate into each one of their 8, 9, 10 different areas. And I really like the idea of this commissioner sort of pulling that across. In other words, super important to have, you know, climate in every department, but also to have someone pull it across. So I really like that one. I think that one's a great one. But that focus on that climate person, focusing on building the resiliency of this county to deal with the huge changes that are coming, that is big. And I know you have that in your wording. I just really support that. You know, secondly, you know, looking at the Sailor Sea, I've been in and around this region for 40 years, and it has declined hugely in the time I've been here. And I've been a scientist sort of observing it. I haven't studied it directly, but I've observed it. And it only recently has it come to have I realized through being part of thinking about rights of nature, that our current environmental laws actually allow us to degrade. They just kind of slow it down. And I just think about that. Why do we have laws that allow us to degrade? What the rights of nature partially is doing, building on what Ira said, is actually trying to be proactive, so that we go out and we say, so for example, question, how can we make the possibility that if there is a catastrophic oil spill in the Sailor Sea down to pretty much zero? What are the actions we'd have to take to do that? Because that happens, this is history. No climate change will change that, but that particular thing. So you know, how can we do that? And then really looking forward, sort of, do we want our grandchildren to be able to eat salmon from the Sailor Sea and to see an orca spy hop? And at the current rate of change, and with our current environmental laws, we're not getting there. And so we need something, you know, stronger, that's really going to, you know, go after, and that's what the rights of nature is trying to do, is trying to strengthen the law so that it's more proactive, and giving rights, I mean, recognizing rights is part of that. Okay, and then the last one, quickly, under justice and equity, I'm going to focus in on the Indigenous piece. You know, I was really delighted to hear that that's part of what you're thinking. You know, I just think that we want to really think about amending the Home Rule Charter to recognize at every turn that the land that we stand on is the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, and to be super clear about that. And then on top of that, we talked about maybe having an Indigenous Advisory Committee, maybe, or I can't remember what you were thinking. Oh, Counselor of Native Affairs. You know, could also think about a council of elders who are Native, but that's another story. But I just really would like to see much stronger efforts to repair, restore, and reciprocate the relationships with the Coast Salish people. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you very much for your comments, Robin. We're going to go to Bob Gamble, and then we're going to go to a phone number 4961, Orcas.
Hi, I'm Bob Gamble from Orcas and Waldron Islands, and this now is my 43rd year in San Juan County. I'd like to encourage the council, as you're thinking about adding something like a climate person or whatever additional positions, that you think about having those be appointed and not elected. I'm sure some of you know that the skill set involved in helping the climate operate properly or to give advice and whatever items you might have. That many times, not always, is a totally different skill set from getting elected. Also, it takes a lot of time and money for somebody to get elected. And I said this last night some too, but please be careful about adding any positions that are elected, because I think that can open up a bigger can of worms than an appointed position. So that's just for something to keep in mind. And once again, thank you for all of the time and effort for this. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Bob. We're going to go to phone number 376-4961. Are you there? Okay, we'll come back to you if you would. Oh, are you there now?
I'm here now.
Okay, great. Please go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is John Evans. I'm a longtime resident of Orcas Island. I am having trouble with my speaking because of some Parkinson's. I seem to be losing that battle anyway. But here we are. I want to thank you very much for the comments you made. I agree with much of what Lisa had to say. And my concern is not particular items, but that you seriously look at how you would implement the things that you want to do. In other words, how does it, as a practical matter, how does government work? If government can't implement it in a fair and equitable manner, we're all going to be very disappointed. So when it comes to the climate person, for example, what would that person do? I think earlier you said that we didn't decide that had to be decided by the council as a matter of policy. And that is correct. However, you need to be able to inform the public about what you anticipate that person can do, how they can do it. Secondly, there's the matter of if you are an individual living in San Juan County and you want to do something, there are so many agencies and hoops that you have to go through so far. Adding more, I'm sure it's going to make life even more difficult. Life here is difficult, it's expensive. I am afraid we are only going to make it more so. But I think everybody's heart is in the right place. Thank you.
John, it's great to hear from you, and thank you so much for being here tonight. And thank you for your comments. We're going to go to Cindy Wolf.
Hi, I'm here today mostly just to thank you for doing the good work and listening. The one thing that it really strikes me, I think needs some more thinking through, having just learned a whole heck of a lot about how county government works, is if you want somebody who is focused on the environment, to be overlooking everything every department does. If you put them in a position where they are elected and they are peer-to-peer with the county council, you are now creating a situation for the staff where they have multiple bosses. And that could get really confusing as a structural change in county government. So are there ways that you could do something with, say, Department of Environmental Resources that could empower them further, perhaps, that would accomplish the same goals without creating a too many bosses at the top of the food chain sort of a situation? just, you know, my 2 cents. Like I said, having looked at county government now from the inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, very much. Okay, Sadie. Oh, Sadie's not ready yet. Okay, you can take a pass and come back later, Sadie. No worries at all. Okay, others who would like to speak? If others are seeing hands up and I'm not, please let me know. I'm toggling through. It's great. We've now got 55 people participating. That's wonderful. Would anybody else like to speak?
I'm Sadie. Maybe I'll have more than one chance. Right now, I just have a question in my mind. I'm a resident of Orcas. I've been here 40 years come June. And I have been around for the first charter and all the comp plans, although not deeply involved. And I'm distressed that the comp plan has been removed, the vision, from the regulations, because I feel that people are not inspired to do the right thing because they don't know why. And I know that's probably a state law or something, but I've heard so much good input, especially about rights of nature. And alas, alack, we have these 10 areas to balance. And what I have seen firsthand is that economic growth comes first. And these things that make it all possible come last. And I also see we're getting better at things like human services, but in terms of environmental protection, the whole system of UGAs, growth management, it mandates that not only do we have UGAs, but we have to have over 50% of us living there, while at the same time we're allowing unprecedented amounts of vacation rentals and no plan to include forest and greenbelt and take care of our wetlands. And that is greatly concerning to me because, at least speaking for East Sound, it was one of the highest functioning wetlands we had. And it also directly connects in with the bodies of salt water on both sides of us. So yes, how are we going to do this? And how are we going to connect them? What our aspirations, which I am so encouraged by hearing all of you speak, how are we going to connect that to the regulations so that there's A, incentive, and B, some teeth? So those are my questions and thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sadie. Others that would like to speak? There's a lot of blacked out screens. Anybody want to share any thoughts? Okay.
Looks like John Helding has his hand up again.
Okay, John, go ahead, please.
Well, I don't know if this is appropriate, but any particular thoughts coming up on the behalf of commissioners from what you've heard here, or any feedback that you might provide on any of what has been raised?
Yeah, we don't want to get too much into a back and forth, but since we have some time, one of the things I did want to do, first of all, is make sure that everybody saw that in the chat, we have listed when those separate meetings are taking place. So Kyle Davies actually posted several of them individually, and then Catherine Hanson, who's our administrator, has provided the link for where all of the meetings are on the website. So please look at those and participate in those individual meetings. I would ask if commissioners have any thoughts based on what you've heard today or last night, if there's anything you want to share, maybe some of the conversation that's taken place in a subcommittee regarding a certain topic or something. Is there anything that any of our committee leads, we'll start with the leads first, and then other commissioners may want to share? Bob O'Connell, please.
And Kevin, I did notice that Ron Metcalf has stand up.
Okay, so before we go to that, we're going to go to Ron Metcalf then. Ron, thank you for being here. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. I'm really impressed with what I've witnessed today and how well prepared and organized you are. But I wasn't prepared for this, but at the very beginning, I gave everybody a copy of the Earth Charter, which the county adopted in 2002, I think, is in some way or another. And I'm hoping that you still have some reference to that, and with the different committees where it's appropriate, that it'll have some influence into some of the process. So I just wanted to raise up the Earth Charter again into all the things you're deciding.
Thank you very much, Ron. And yes, that has really impacted our conversations, and particularly with regard to the kind of rights of nature discussion as well. So thank you for early on comments to us. So I'm going to go to Ron Metcalf, Jane Fuller, and then to Bob O'Connell.
Bob, would you like me to defer to you because your hand up was up
No,
first?
go ahead, Jane. Go ahead, Jane.
Okay.
We're a team here.
Indeed, yeah. Okay. I'm just going to offer up on behalf of the Justice and Equity Committee, and my co-chair Kyle may wish to add a comment or two on top of mine. Actually, Kyle put forward at the outset of our coming together as a commission various issues we felt were worthy of discussion. Kyle had a lot of very good suggestions, and we value those ideas. I think in terms of our Justice and Equity Committee, we are beginning to reach out to stakeholders in the community, as are all the committees and as is the commission, to hear various viewpoints on issues of justice and equity, not least because of the very tumultuous year that the county and the country experienced last year around issues of race and discrimination, et cetera. But we are really wanting to hear from folks about the importance of issues of diversity, inclusion, equality. Issues of Indigenous peoples of this area are important to us. So too are issues of racial diversity, and so too are issues of gender equality. And gender is thinking of gender in diverse ways, not just binary male, female. So we are trying to think big about what we're looking at in terms of justice and equity. And so we welcome input for sure. And I just wanted to let you know, and some of you may already, that there was a resolution number 31, 2020 passed by the County Council last year if I'm not mistaken, it was June. And you can reference that resolution number 31, 2020 that was it was affirming the county's commitment to a safe and inclusive community here. And in that resolution are some very, very meaningful principles. I encourage any of you that are interested in the justice and equity conversation to take a look at it. And I think what we're thinking about as a committee is how could perhaps structurally within our county government, how could we find ways to enable those principles to be lived more fully? And so we are in discussion with the county manager and others to explore what steps are being taken to work on that resolution. We're looking at it also, though, from our potential for amendment to the charter side. And finally, I would just say, I do hear a lot of enthusiasm about the rights of nature. I guess I just want to add, when one of the things we need to do as a commission, if we're talking about a Bill of Rights that is greater than just nature, that's a conversation we need to have still as a commission. So thank you for all of your ideas today, and we look forward to more input. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Bob, please.
First of all, to Jane, yes, the Bill of Rights that we're going to be considering, I'm sure, is going to contain elements talking about what the human rights are that need to be respected here in the county. As far as the rest of it and the rights of nature, et cetera, we're having a healthy debate with both sides of that particular, not both sides, it's kind of a round thing of that particular question being talked about. Right now we are engaging in some philosophical discussions, and also collecting examples of successful bills of rights regarding nature, right? And so we're collecting those, and we'll be acting on those in the weeks to come. Sooner than that, however, we'll probably be acting on our aspirational preamble. I would say that in the agenda that will probably be promulgated and posted tomorrow for Tuesday's meeting, which is at 10:30 of the process committee, they'll probably one of the items on there will probably be a debate on what on certain proposed parts of the preamble. So anybody who's interested in that, come on and join in. I have a question, however, of the other commissioners. I don't know where this lies. I'm very interested in, and my interest has been renewed by all of the questions in the prospects for ranked choice voting. Very, very important to a lot of people who have attended these two town halls. Which committee is presently looking at that? Is the elections committee looking at that? And if not, will they be bringing it up?
I can speak to that.
Go ahead.
It's Sharon. I'm on the elections committee, and we only just, it first came up into our discussion this past week, so we haven't listed it as one of the issues we've really processed yet, but we have just started to work on it. So it is being talked about in the elections committee, which
outstanding.
Is meeting at
that's great
4 p.m. on Wednesdays.
No,
Thursdays.
4 p.m. Thursday?
On Thursdays. Okay.
I might join you.
What's the question about?
And again, any members of the public who want to sit in on those subcommittee meetings, and I really encourage you to, particularly where there's issues that you're excited about, dive in on that subject and help us educate ourselves and learn from you. So any other from the public that want to speak right now? And if not, what I'd like to do is put our subcommittee leads on the spot and have you say a couple words just about what discussions we went over at very high level, but maybe if you could recap that and just say a couple things. So looks like Liz has her hand up.
Gonna wait to see if there was anybody else from the public, but no.
I haven't seen anybody yet. And so I'm gonna go Liz and then Maureen and then Kyle.
Okay. So Kevin, if you would help me out here and school me if I'm wrong, but
if I have an answer.
So part of the privilege of being a commissioner has been, the benefit of having people come and speak to us. So if the public can access those recordings, I wanted to let people know they exist. And they're, for example, Sheriff Krebs, is that how you say his last name? Yep. He came and I was blown away for the work he is doing. And so anyone concerned about equal justice, equity, those kind of things, not that there isn't more to do, but he certainly appears, from everything I heard, to have the right heart and mind to head us in a really valuable direction. So that's what, and then the woman who's the scientist in charge of all of our environmental biologists, and listening to what they all are doing. So I think if, not that everybody has endless time in their hands, but if you can choose one or two of those speakers that we got the privilege to listen to, I really invite you, and one of these techno wizards will help you know how to do that, but go and listen to some of these people that have come and spoken to us to help us clarify our thinking and, what's doable, what's already being done, where is it an enforcement issue versus where is it we need new language. Really powerful stuff, everybody. So thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Liz. And just to comment on that quickly for the public's sake, so we have already had a number of presentations from, as was mentioned, our sheriff, from our county manager, from our county auditor about the entire county budget process, which they're responsible for. We've also had some outside presentations. We had the chief of staff and the past chair of the King County Charter Review Commission. And I want to comment that King County is obviously not very similar to San Juan County when you look at size and population. Where they are similar is the demographics of the voters and some of the issues that they tackled in their very recently adopted charter are issues that we were looking at. And so we asked Ron Sims and Mac, the chief of staff, to come and present to us, and others. And then we've also invited the current county council, past county council persons, all of the other elected officials, and some of them will be presenting to the full county charter review commission, and some will be presenting to the subcommittees. And so we have some very interesting agendas lined up and encourage you to participate in those. So I'm going to go to Maureen and then Kyle.
Thank you. Well, there's so many incredible ideas that are coming out. I think it's going to make us reprioritize the task lists we've been working on, because this is very powerful. I think the ranked choice voting and the build out analysis was very impressive to me last night. There's a lot of very good ideas there. I'm the lead in the elected versus appointed, which is a really important discussion for all of us to have and weigh in on. And I keep running this idea in my head about too many electeds making the checks and balances an unworkable extreme at times, and that can interfere with the efficiency of the government. And I think that that's critical. So we have been talking about the pros and cons of that. We've also, now we're trying to focus in on the auditor, the treasurer, the assessor. Can they be consolidated, one or two, or all of them, or none of them? And I think it's important. We're going to be looking at that next Monday and try to get a couple of scenarios that we can then pass on to the county administrator or county manager for a cost analysis of it. I think that's important. And there are other electeds we'll be looking at. We haven't even begun to talk about term limits, and that's on our list as well. That's an important discussion. We have talked about language regarding requirements. We're kind of been stopped a bit from an opinion by Randy on that. But there are many things we've got that we're challenged by, and we're going to continue to look at them. And this is a very good group. And thank you, everyone, for the new life you're breathing into our discussions. It's great.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go to Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two items I think that are really appeals back to this group, and this is a rare opportunity so far to have a number of people at large that can inform us. So number one, and we've come close to this a couple of times tonight, I'm interested, and I think the group is interested. Many different groups, collections of people in this county are working on some of these same topics. And we do have some really great people aboard on the commission, but no doubt some of you feel like there are people that we haven't heard from, or maybe there's a risk that we won't. And I, for one, I think most would agree, if not all, I would love to have any of you reach out to me or to us through the website and pass on the names of people that you believe we should hear from. That maybe are represented on the screen today, or were yesterday, or we haven't heard from yet. And I would also say there was a lot of conversation in the group early on about how to do this outreach piece, how many or how often or how late into the process to include public comment and the town hall kind of approach. And this was a clear need that everyone shared, to hear from people at large. And of course, we will get closer and closer to structured and more refined positions and pieces to put before the voters. But in the process, if you have ideas about how we should continue to hear from people, I would welcome that same input. I just wanted to make that pitch and encourage people at large to keep this a transparent and productive conversation.
Thank you very much, Kyle. I should also state that we're planning on having another round of town halls later in this process. So after we've come together and started to coalesce around some different amendments. And we're starting to see some of those that we think are going to be likely ones that we're going to pass on for the ballot. We're going to go out for another round of town halls so that we can get direct comments on those before we actually finalize that process. So with that, I'm going to go to Anne-Marie Shanks, who is the chair of the Climate and Environment Committee.
Yes, thank you, all of you, for being here. And just spinning off a little bit of what Kyle said, and he's also on the Climate Committee with us. There are a number of groups, I think the three main islands, San Juan, Orcas, and Lopez, all have transition groups who have very, very good ideas and points about climate, sustainability, resiliency, sustainable tourism. And there's a New Deal, San Juan's, that has many, many ideas that all can be incorporated into the work we're doing, as well as we have a number of volunteers in our county organization in different entities, whether they're in agriculture or the conservation district, and all of those ideas should be brought together into what our climate situation is. One of the reasons that I think that the climate commissioner or an elected position came to light is because all over the world, you have island countries, you have counties all over that have created climate strategies and are implementing them. Many, many years have gone by where suggestions have been made and we haven't done anything. And as many of you have said, the time is now. This is a 10-year process, and we have got to step up to the table because we are failing our children, we are failing our environment, we are failing what we have inherited. So having given that lecture, I'll go forward and say that what we're doing now is we're looking at many of these places who have already started this process. Some of them are close neighbors, like Bainbridge Island. Others are a little further away, like Honolulu. But people are out there doing this work. And many of the island communities, like Fiji, have actually created whole entities that are devised around their economics and the COVID, that are making plans for how they're moving forward. We've had discussions within our county or our little committee about the elected versus the appointed. And I think many people there originally would have said an appointed position would be good. But what came to pass was, as we talked about where that person or where our environmental people were now, we saw conflicts. And we said, well, how can they be in public works and be doing, this activity, or how can they be over here in planning or not in planning and making recommendations to planning that aren't being accepted? So that's kind of the tug back and forth. And we are talking to the county people who have these responsibilities. Last week, Kendra Smith met with us. One of the things I walked away from that conversation with was that Kendra doesn't really receive any county money. What she gets money for is stormwater and things like that. She doesn't get any general fund money. We've heard Mike Thomas talk about how there really isn't any general fund money for our parks. It doesn't sound like we have any money for the environment. And I personally am offended by that. We're also going to talk this week with Erica Shook, who does a tremendous job in our county community development office. Very, very stressful work. And I understand that and I appreciate her. She's going to talk to us about the interface between the comprehensive plan and decision-making on the ground. And how does what we have said and put forward as how we're going to run the county really happen? And I'm hoping that we have a really upfront conversation with her about that, and that we can learn more about how she's contacted and asked about things and how things are accepted. Another person from our community that's going to come and speak to us on Wednesday is Barbara Rosencotter. And Barbara, for many years, as the lead entity for the Salmon Recovery Project. And she also will be able to help us understand a little bit about the nuances of where the money comes from. Kendra has many people on her staff that work off of fish and wildlife grants from the federal and the state government. Those people are not funded by our county. So when they come forward and say things to our county representatives and to our county decision makers, they're not necessarily perceived as being part of that process. So these are the tugs that we have to take on, and these are the decisions that we have to make in the next few months or in the year as we go forward. And I'm not coming to this with any one particular perspective that I feel like I have to push forward. I'm coming to this to say, how can we make this happen? How can we make this happen over the next 10 years? How can we measure it? And how can we be successful? Hope that helps.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Vote for Anne-Marie.
I'm retired.
No, you can't.
Let me see who else from our commission. Sorry, I'm trying to read chats to me and scroll through screens at the same time. I've reached my bandwidth limit.
Dave Anderson's got his hand up. Kevin.
Yeah, I told Sharon she wanted to make a comment about when her meetings take place as well. So I'm going to go to Sharon and then Dave.
Okay. I think you also want to let Brian Goff speak as well? Is that true?
I'm not sure.
I'll just say very briefly then. I want to just point out to people that the Elections Committee is not meeting this coming week. There will be no meeting of the Elections Committee on March 18th, but there will be a meeting of the Elections Committee the following Thursday, March 25th at 4 p.m. And in the meantime, if you want to communicate with me or any of us by email, that's perfectly fine. We will be communicating by email. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave Anderson from I'm the lead of the governance committee. And to start off, I want to say that one thing about this commission is that it is elected by a system that's very similar to ranked choice voting. And so ranked choice voting is not that far off from what is possible, we are doing right now. And so it's exciting that so many people are talking about that. But as far as the governance committee, we're looking at some really exciting issues. So far right now, we're really focused on looking at the relationship between the council and the county manager. What is the relationship? What's the authority that the council has over the manager? How is the manager interacting with the rest of the executive branch? And we're trying to make sure that that's functioning for our county and to make sure it's what is best. Also looking at the deputy position for the county manager. Is that something that's going on? Is there support for the county manager in county government? There's been interest in local government for islands, individual islands. It's kind of interesting that word island is only in our charter twice in the same sentence. We are more focused as districts and our government structured as districts. And so there has been interest in creating local government or more local representation from local islands, and that is a subject that we are soon to be looking at. And also, it's been brought up that we should look at boards and commissions and committees. And if I may, I'm going to read what we have, because we have a lot of boards, commissions, and committees that are populated with a lot of volunteers who really dedicate a lot of time, intelligence, and effort for the voters and for the San Juan County. And so I'm just going to read them because we have the Agricultural Resource Committee, the Agricultural Tax Advisory Committee, Action Agenda Oversight Group, Board of Equalization, Board of Health, Building Advisory Council, the Charter Review Commission, and Citizen Salary Commission, Civil Service Board, Clean Water Advisory Committee, Deer Harbor Planning Review Committee, East Sound Design Review Committee, East Sound Planning Review Committee, Employee Safety Committee, Fair Board, and the Ferry Advisory Committee. That's a lot of boards, that's a lot of people, and it's often not they don't always make the newspaper, or haven't really been talked much about in this commission. but they're making a lot of decisions for our county, and we want to make sure that they're functioning correctly, that they're being appointed in a way that they are getting appointed, and making sure that there's transparency involved and that people are aware of the work they're doing. So it's an exciting committee. There's a lot of really smart people, and I feel really lucky to work with them. And so please feel free to reach out to us about your concerns, and please join us on Thursdays between 7 and 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Nice. Thanks a lot. Patty, can I call on you to talk about your committee?
Oh, sure. I'm on 3 committees, and it's wonderful to be on all of them. I happen to be the lead for the Initiative and Referendum Committee. It's more straightforward. We're really trying to make that whole process accessible for people who have good ideas, to get them out and get voted on. But you run into problems with gathering signatures. Right now, 15% of all of the people that voted in the last gubernatorial election are required for the initial signature gathering, which is almost 2,000 signatures. And that's kind of hard to get. So we're thinking about maybe reducing that cap, because our counties around us that are home rule, most of them, we're the highest. So we're thinking maybe of trying to lower that. And then there's the question about the limitation in initiatives for financial. If it's going to cost any money, then maybe it's not going to go. Anyway, there's a lot of discussion about that. Also, something was brought up about not having paid signature gathering, which I think is a really good suggestion. We're really just trying to get that process very robust, but not so that we're going to have frivolous initiatives and frivolous people challenging referenda. Anyway, it's an important committee, but it's more straightforward, and you're welcome to come and gather with us. We meet on Mondays at 7 o'clock.
Great, thank you so much. Paul Dossett, would you mind saying a couple of things about the Operations Committee? Paul, are you still with us? He may have had to drop off. Okay. All right. Are there any other comments from the public at this point? Okay. So I am serving on the, I'm going to start being on the Governance Committee, just because that topic has been very exciting to me, and also been paying attention to the Elections and Appointed Committee, as well as a couple others, actually. Another one that, that I've been participating in has been the Environment and Climate Committee. And I will make a couple comments on that one. One is the issue of consolidation, as Anne-Marie said, of the different environmental aspects of the county is something that has come up quite a bit, not just within our commission, but people on the street approaching us, people writing to us in comments we've received before even the charter got started. The other issue is this independent elected position. And I actually, having been in the seat where Cindy is now for a full term, and then being elected for 10 years after that, originally came to the place of that should be an appointed position, and it should be a department within the county. I more recently, however, have been thinking about that more and having different conversations with people, and realized something that is very true, which is when a position is elected, they have an independent voice. When they're appointed, they're either going to answer to the county manager or to the full county council, if there were that relationship, but most likely the county manager. So the issues of climate become what they have been for the last 2 decades. In San Juan County, we passed our first climate resolution in 2008. And I drafted that. And I was appalled years later when I came back and realized that almost none of it had been implemented. When you looked at the rationale why, when I talked to some of the independently elected officials, they said, well, thanks for sharing, but I'm an independently elected official and I didn't necessarily need to pay attention to that. When you have somebody who's independently elected, they have a strong voice. They can go into the council chamber and say, this is what we're doing. And the council can agree or disagree, but they have the ability to stand up and be bold with their position. An appointed official answers to their boss. And it's not that our county manager, and definitely not our current county council, wouldn't be bold on climate. It's that there's a whole bunch of other priorities. So if you have an independently elected official whose sole purpose is focusing on climate and also, as was brought up earlier, broader resiliency, then that person has a voice as an independently elected official and is able to put forward their own agenda without it being put through the prioritization of everything the county council has to consider or everything the county manager is considering. And so that, for me, has really brought me full circle to where now I'm starting to say, wow, you know what? Maybe this needs to be an elected position, because since 2008, we've been talking about climate, and I'm not sure if I could count on one hand. I think I could count on two fingers actions that have taken place that have really had a solid impact. And so I think that'll change because more people are paying attention, but I also think that having an independently elected official forces that topic. And so that's the discussion that's happened internally that I just wanted to share. And like I said, it's brought me full circle now from where I was to where I am now on my thinking on that. So, and it goes back and forth. There's been a very interesting conversation on whether or not the sheriff should be elected versus appointed. And how does an appointed sheriff versus an elected deal differently on issues of justice and equality and equity? King County just made their sheriff appointed after making them elected after they were appointed. Their charter commission has gone back and forth almost every time. And it was very interesting listening to Ron Sims and listening to our own sheriff talk about their rationale for if somebody should be appointed versus elected and how that would impact decisions. For me, the strongest argument for somebody being elected is that they have an independent voice. It's the same way we have seen, and sorry, Cindy, to put you on the spot, but the council person from Orcas standing up boldly in the last weeks on the vacation rental issue. And wherever you are on that issue is not my point. My point is our council person was very clear about their position. And because they were independently elected, they were able to stand up and say, this is my position. Whereas if they're appointed, that gets difficult. So I'll get off my soapbox now on that. But I just wanted to share so that people understand kind of the deep conversations that we've been having on our subcommittees, going back and forth on many of the questions that you're raising tonight. And I really hope that you will begin, all of you on this call, and tell your friends, please, to sit in on the individual subcommittee conversations, because once in a decade, we have this opportunity. And I think we have an opportunity to be bold and really think about what opportunities we have, what we dream of, what our aspirations are, and how we can make a difference for the future generations of Islanders that come through here. So I think there's a couple hands up. I hope I didn't anybody or anything. Okay, Cindy's got her hand up. Let's go to Cindy. Did you want to speak, Cindy?
Yeah, I do. My questions around this elected environmental position are twofold. One is I quite agree with Bob that I think there's a special skill set that's necessary for it. The second question, so how are you going to assure that? It sounds like there might be that's a discussion with Randall. The second question for me is then, how are you coming to the decisions that direct staff? Because as it is, the charter, has rolled executive and legislative authority into the council. So if you're putting this fourth person in, are they making decisions by themselves? Are they coming in as a sort of fourth member of council? How does this work?
So thank you, Cindy. That's what's still being discussed, and all of that will be figured out.
When people are elected or appointed, the rights of nature.
John, could you mute, please? Thank you. Sorry, everybody got muted. Okay, I should be unmuted now. And Bill Apple has his hand up too. So I'll go to Bill after I make one comment. So Cindy, in direct response to your comment or question.
Partly, I wanted to not just respond to Cindy, but really ask everyone this question.
Okay, go ahead.
Create a separate silo of power where someone is elected. The question is, where does the power go? I hear Kevin say an independent voice. That is true. But Cindy has raised the question, which I confess is valid, is yeah, but who gets the say so? That is unresolved, and that's hung up on the chute. And I'm looking forward to see how this comes down, because one person or another person runs that department, but two cannot. And right. So the question is, what is this official's real role is? I've noticed that in Honolulu, there's an elected or appointed official whose job is to go out into various communities and get the communities organized so that they become resilient, do it piece by piece and with the consent of the people. One of the important things about election is you gain consent of the community, which is a very important element on this topic, because anything involving the environment involves giving up power, and anything that is pro-nature is anti-human. That is, it may save the human race, but the individuals involved feel that their rights are being clipped. This is a very complex issue, and I'm just dying to hear this committee report.
Yes, thank you, Bill. I was going to go down a similar path, actually. I think that, Cindy, in direct response to your question, we're looking at exactly that. We're looking at what would the authority be and how could it exist? A simple way to look at it would be to say that it would not be a fourth person for the council. It would only be looking at the issues of climate and resiliency, just like the auditor has their own functions or the treasurer has their own functions currently. And so it would be another elected official who would have a very focused area or focus area for their department, just like the other elected officials. And I actually said this to the Charter Review Commission in one of our first discussions on this topic. One of the more powerful experiences for me as a county commissioner and council person when I was in that seat was when Mylene Henley, when she first ran, was thinking that it would be better if we had an appointed auditor. And after a while of her in that seat, she told me that she was thinking it should be elected. And I teased her, and I've said this directly to her, so I know I can say this, but I teased her and I said, oh yeah, now that you're the elected one, you think it should be elected. And she said, I think it's really important that the person who's responsible for the budget for San Juan County be able to stand up in front of the county council and tell them they have a bad idea, or tell them that they're going, too far in one way or another. And my focus is the budget. And because I'm independently elected, I can do that. And at the time I kind of smirked. And about a year later, when I was chair of the council and I was the lead on draft for the council working on our budget, she came in and told me that some of my ideas were harebrained and were going to cost too much money. And she laughed and said, and I'm able to tell you that straight to your face because I don't work for you, I'm elected. I want a person who's speaking for the environment and climate change to be able to have that same position. So regardless, again, this is a 10-year focus. So regardless of what amazing people are on the county council now, maybe they won't be next time around. And I want the person speaking for the environment and climate to be able to stand up. So that's the thinking on that. But Bill, thank you for that. And the other thing I would say is, Bill is really helping us legally, and Bob and we've got some great legal minds on the commission, as well as advice from Randy. There has to be a connection between that rights for nature conversation and this conversation too, of do we want to connect or create an office of climate and resiliency, and do you want to have an elected position? Because to Bill's point, we've got to define what authority that person has or doesn't have, so that it really works well within county government. We also, as was brought up more last night than today, Maybe it's that in the evening people think about their pocketbook more. I don't know. But we also need to think about the fiscal impacts of this. There is not a necessity for us to put out a budget associated with our recommendations and our amendments, but it is really important for us to be honest with each other and the public about costs associated with these. So the other thing is elected versus appointed end up costing about the same, or actually sometimes more for appointed. But that just depends on the position. So all of these things are what we're talking about. And I really encourage you all, please, to sit in on our subcommittee meetings and participate in those and give us your input as we go forward. Did anybody else have any other comments at this point from the public? Patty, you're pointing at somebody and I can't see them. They're on a different screen for me. No? Okay.
Kevin, I just want to say, I want to speak on behalf of a member of the public, which is why I've had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Okay, because I saw Brian Goff in the chat and I said I would respond to him, even he didn't want to speak on the Zoom. So I just want to, Brian had said in the chat, he's a teacher at Lopez School, would love to add a plug for not only the rights of students and young people, but the voices and perspectives of students and young people. And he's asking, how can the county engage families and advocate for our school districts, which are in a bit of a financial crisis? How can we work better as a county to focus our voice in Olympia?
Thank you for sharing that.
I'd like to, can I speak briefly to one aspect of that?
Go ahead.
Okay. Just one thing I happen to know about, because I've been involved in this, there's a group of high school students on Whidbey Island, and they're called United Student Leaders. And they are so impressive to me, these students. They are really trying to make change in the school districts on Whidbey Island to take into consideration more the voices of the students. They want changes to their curriculum that speak more to their concerns here in the year 2021. Some of that has to do with justice and equity. Some of it has to do with gender sensitivity. Some of it has to do with climate change, that don't necessarily have any of this in their curriculum, and they're working with the school administration to change the curriculum so it better reflects their concerns.
Thank you very much. Bob Gamble, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this matter of elected versus appointed, and I'm still leaning on the side of appointed, but I appreciate your thoughts, Kevin, on the advantages of elected, and I wonder if there's a way to have it be appointed with a higher bar for getting rid of the person. I'm thinking of the US government with the FBI, head of the FBI, who can be fired by the president, but I think it's a much more difficult thing to do than some of the people. I don't know, but I wonder if there's a way to have it be appointed, but it's not easy for the council to just say, we don't like the way you've been standing up to us, therefore you're fired. I would not like to see that, but I think it can be done where it's an appointed person who can stand up to the council, in effect to their bosses, and speak truth to power. So I'd like, if possible, you folks to investigate that. And if I come up with any thoughts, I'll let you guys know in another forum. Thank you.
Bob O'Connell, I see your hand. First, I want to go to Sadie again, though, and then I'm going to go to Bob and then Jane Fuller.
Sorry, had to figure out how to unmute. So what I did want to add that Robin Reed's share really moved me, because I feel like so much of this is, and you've all covered this, but so much of it is so interrelated. You cannot separate it. You can't really compartmentalize it. And I think like justice and equity and environmental rights are all one thing, really, when you boil it down. Human rights, environmental rights are the same thing. And so I'm hoping that maybe those committees are working with each other. Both of those interest me, but I just don't think you can separate it out one from the other, because it's all connected. I think that's been the problem with my frustration with the government is in general, until this commission, where I actually feel like this charter commission and this council, where we have Orcas representation for our island, is finally taking on some of these things and trying to connect the dots. We can't do this without doing that. So that's just what I would add. I was just moved and impressed by what she said, because I really do think without Indigenous rights, without all the rights, sexual rights, gender rights, race rights, Indigenous rights, and rights of the environment, it's all one. We can't separate it. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I'm going to go to Bob Gamble, and then Jane, and then Liz.
And me eventually.
I'm sorry. I'm going
Actually,
to say Bob O'Connell, not Bob Gamble. Bob Gamble.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob O'Connell.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've got three separate things. First, I think that the preamble, yes, the preamble that, no, the Bill of Rights that the process committee eventually comes up with will probably end up being the responsibility of the climate commissioner or the advocate for the environment, whatever we're going to call that person, to enforce in a way that we have not yet determined. The second thing is that the climate commissioner, I am for, as you are, Kevin, I am for the climate commissioner being elected. However, there is a way to do what Bob Gamble is suggesting, which is to do follow the judicial appointment path. And in that path, the commissioner is appointed, and then at the next election, after a period of years, at the next election cycle, that switches over to an elected office. And so either that person runs against competition, or you can make it so that it is a thumbs up, thumbs down on a reaffirmation by the public of how that person is doing. And if it's a thumbs down, then there's a new appointment. And that's a way for the people to be involved directly, and for the person after the first, going into that election cycle, for that person to be working for the people as opposed to an individual. And my third thing was to ask Kevin if you knew, or if one of the other chairmen knew, who is looking at the we're very concerned with growth and population. We got a lot of comments on that, and on the build out analysis. Who is working on that idea and how to get that into being? What committee is working on that?
I don't know if it's come up yet, but I think it would fall under a climate and environment committee.
I would think so.
So, but it has not come up yet. And that was something that was brought up last night. I do have to point out, we've got 1 minute left in this meeting. And as the commission knows, I like to try and be on time and make sure that we actually end on time so people can get back to whatever they want to do with their families or enjoy a little bit of time before we lose our son here. So I'm going to go to Liz quickly. Jane, you had your hand up too. Are you okay? Or you want to go quickly?
Yeah, I did want to make just two very brief points.
Okay, so we'll go to you and then Liz, and then we're going to call it an evening.
Right. So the first point I wanted to make was that I really appreciate the comment that Brian Goff made, as well as John Helding, regarding the importance of hearing from children and youth. Mm-hmm. And certainly for our Equity and Justice Committee, we want to hear from that constituency, and not just from one island. We'd like to hear from that constituency sort of county-wide, and welcome suggestions on how best to ensure that the voices of youth are incorporated along with other important voices we're looking to hear from. So that's one point. The second point I wanted to make, a bit to Sadie's comment, is that indeed there's tremendous interlinkage between environmental considerations and the rights of nature, as well as issues of human rights. Having worked on gender equality issues for the last 25 years of my career, as well as human rights issues, I would say that it is really important, I think, for our commission, if we're thinking about structural modifications to the charter, that we think very clearly about how those issues can be dealt with by the government. And you certainly couldn't have an environmental commissioner looking after the rights of all manner of diverse peoples. So we need to study this, we need to think about this. And so in that respect, in terms of how these kinds of rights are implemented, we need to be mindful, really in a way to Cindy Wolf's point, as to, and the gentleman's point from Orcus, the gentleman that was so graciously spoke on the telephone. We need to think about what's implementable, and we're taking that seriously. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Jane. Liz?
Kevin, I was just thinking that we might want to wrap up this meeting by managing expectations. So we've been extending invitations for people to come participate in the subcommittees, but I want to make sure people have a sense of what that will look like. You know, it's still our job to hash this out and how we would involve them. And so I just thought you might want to address that briefly.
Thank you, Liz. That's an excellent suggestion. So we'll close on that. So for folks who come to participate in a subcommittee, the subcommittee is the commissioners on that committee really diving into the work. So you won't have the ability to participate in the conversation as they're diving into it. You'll be able to listen in. At the end of each subcommittee, however, there will be an opportunity for public comment for any members of the public who are there. And at that point, you could comment on what's been said over that last hour or 2 hour, depending on what meeting it is, period. And then those comments will be taken into consideration. The full Charter Review Commission also meets every week, and you're welcome to sit on those meetings. And for the last 10 minutes of every meeting, we have public comment there as well. And you can also write in comments. But Liz, thank you for pointing that out. If you sit in on a subcommittee meeting, it's not going to just be a free-for-all where you get to just dive in. We really need that opportunity for the commissioners to be able to listen to different presentations and then sit in and then comment on those at the end, but allow the commissioners to have their back and forth. So that's how that process will work. And then
Kevin, thank you for doing that, because I really wanted to not overpromise and then underdeliver. So thank you. And I'm excited to have people show up with that caveat.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And then again, we'll have another round of town halls as we start to finalize our recommendations so that we can hear from everybody again. And then early on in the chat, everybody's emails were put in there, but very quickly, email is our first name, last initial at sanjuanco.com, everybody. So if you want to email anybody in the county, actually, that's it. There's the secret is out. But you can email us as well. But I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. This was a great turnout and a great conversation. Just thank you for inspiring and empowering us to do more work too. So everybody have a wonderful evening and good night.
Thank you. Thank you,
Good night,
Kevin.
everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. You're all good.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Fabulous to have your comments.
Thank you, everybody.
Merci.
We're down to one page. Hey, yeah, great job, everybody. Catherine, thank you so much. Olivia, thank you so much. You guys are amazing.
Go team.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
I counted 55 people at the top. Anybody get a higher count?
No, I think we were at 55 and last night was, I think 70 or right around there. So it's great. Good participation.
Indeed. Well done.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, Catherine, are you going to stop recording?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.